our topic today is going to be on health anxiety.
Sometimes it feels like I need to go to the urgent care right now. And if we can change that even to, it's like, I'm not saying I'm not going to go at all, but can I just give it a little bit of time? You might notice that if you have OCD with health themes, some of the compulsions or rituals that you might do might just be a little bit more unique or special. There's a lot of treatment consistencies between OCD and health anxiety.
Our team and our anxiety specialists, they're teaching people to face fear head on when it's not life-threatening or dangerous, to do things that invoke or create some fear or angst, knowing that you can handle it because you were doing it well before you saw the therapist, and to take brave actions while you're facing those fears that get you closer to living a full life. And so the phrase we use throughout the book and in all of our work is live with fear, not in fear.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Get to Know OCD podcast. It's exciting today to have two people on with us. Normally we have one, but double trouble is maybe what it is. We've got Dr. Josh Spitalnick and Michael Stier joining us today. I want to give you two a little bit of time to introduce yourself. And our topic today is going to be on health anxiety, which I think is always a great topic, especially as we get toward the cold and flu season and the COVID discussions and these things. And you might have had a book. I don't know. Maybe. Might have. So let me turn it over to the two of you to introduce yourselves. Tell us where you work, what you do, and then we'll get into some fun things.
I'm Dr. Josh Spitalnick. I'm a clinical psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the CEO and owner of Anxiety Specialists of Atlanta, a clinic in Atlanta suburbs, providing services to over 40 states and having clinicians in 3 different states. We see kids, little ones, all the way to up to age 80. We're anxiety and OCD specialists, provide a lot of in-person telehealth and a ton of group-based services. And I think I have the best team in the land. So that's a little bit about me, what we're doing. And Michael and I are very passionate about OCD and specifically the subset of health concerns.
And I'm Michael Stier. I work for Anxiety Specialists of Atlanta as the Director of Education and Training. Also spend full time treating OCD, health anxiety, and all the related disorders. And really trying to build up this side of health anxiety, which is great to be on this podcast to just really be able to disseminate information better, supports, all those different types of things. So I'm excited to be here and ready to talk about some health anxiety.
So your two mutual interest in health anxiety led to a book that came out this year. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of how that came about and what the impetus was for that, and even maybe a little bit of the process of writing it and what it's been like since it's come out?
Michael, take it.
I think there's a lot of back and forth at first about kind of going back and forth and being like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to write a book. And then we would send a text to each other or talk to each other like, nah, probably not. And like, well, what? We probably should. And I think at some point we finally convinced each other that it maybe was something to try out. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that being so far away, me being in St. Louis and Josh being in Atlanta, it was an interesting process to be able to continue to go back and forth. But I feel like we found our groove. But it was interesting to be able to go back and forth and try to blend both of our voices within the book to make sure that it doesn't just sound like I'm taking a chapter and Josh is taking a chapter. And but it was a lot of work, but it was definitely a great experience to be able to really get a lot of the thoughts and ideas that we've had from the OCD world and how they apply to the OCD world, and be able to really center them and focus them on health anxiety. And that was really neat, especially because so many things relate, like we can talk about today. But he was pretty good to work with. So just in case, anybody was wondering, it was incredibly kind of a seamless process of being able to kind of go back and forth.
He's okay to work with. Yeah.
He's okay to work with.
He's there.
Yeah. Put that on the epitaph.
Yeah.
I want to add that I think when we wrote the book, I don't think we thought this out at the beginning, but the book became an extension of us as therapists. And for any of you who've listened to this podcast with Know OCD and Patrick, many of us have enjoyed and watching Patrick and his career pre and now with Know OCD, and his style of therapy and education and podcasting is very akin to the way Michael and I talk and in the therapy room. And I think a lot of people in the OCD community, professionals, use a lot of humor and compassion and hyperboles and storytelling to help someone figure out how to get their life back. And so for me, this book, besides it being hopefully very educational, Patrick, and giving people practical tips and offering some real insight and compassion, it was like sitting in therapy with Michael and I when we started writing it and getting it out there. And in fact, right now we're in discussions to put an audio book version of it out there. There's a paperback and a digital version that you can get on Amazon easily. But what I love about the book is it's one of those books where you're not just going to read it and learn skills and learn the science and basics of OCD or health anxiety, which it has that. There is a lot of storytelling and a lot of metaphors and scary statistics and inside jokes and some dad humor. It's the way we do therapy. It gives us the ability to sort of step back from the seriousness of things like health anxiety and actually battling real medical issues or thinking you have a real medical issue. And that's our brand of therapy. I mean, that's what I love about doing the work that I do with little ones and with adults, which is to bring some humor and sarcasm, not to the person, but to the topic. And that in and of itself is actually a skill. It's actually called a diffusion skill. It's an acceptance and commitment therapy skill. So the book hopefully is very educational and impactful, but it's like sitting in therapy with us for 10 chapters. Yeah. And if you like that, it's a great book for you. If you don't, then you're not going to want to see us as therapists.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with maybe just a general definition of what is health anxiety. And let me caveat that is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual lists a whole bunch of things: OCD related to health, somatic symptom disorder, illness anxiety disorder, though it's called illness anxiety disorder, isn't listed as an anxiety disorder, which still perplexes me to this day. Give us an overview of what we're talking about here with this topic.
See, I can jump in and go ahead, Josh. Take it away.
I'll start. You finish. So for us, we break health anxiety primarily into three categories, and we do this in the book. We do this in treatment. We also have a free resource out there, a website, overcominghealthanxiety.com, that we're now in version 3 of, building up and getting tons of podcasts and videos and drop-down menus and lists. And this is on there, which is to understand health anxiety can mean that you're actually battling real medical issues. Yeah, Patrick, we don't normally think about this as health anxiety, but someone who's worrying about their health because they genuinely have a medical diagnosis and they're struggling with it, it's still health anxiety. Sure. That's just not typically what this book or when we're treating health anxiety usually focuses on. Yeah. But any therapist who's supporting someone who has cancer, neurological issues, chronic issues, IBS, those kind of diabetes, food allergies, you're supporting someone who's fearful of what happens to their life and how they manage it. And so that's one space where there's genuine medical issues. That's a minority of what we're typically talking about when we talk about health anxiety, but that's category A. Categories B and C are the more common ones where we're talking about, you referenced somatic symptom disorder, which is in the DSM, and illness anxiety disorder. For Michael and I, academically and just to the layperson, somatic symptom disorder is when you have real physical symptoms that have not been deemed medical. They don't require medicines. They don't require surgeries. X-rays, MRIs, CTs have ruled anything medical out, but there's some genuine physical things going on. I apologize, physical, back issues, tummy issues, migraines, headaches, leg issues, neuropathic issues, eye floaters, you name it. Doctors have either not been able to diagnose you or they've ruled everything out and you're kind of getting a diagnosis of exclusion, but you're having physical issues. And that's typically called somatic symptom disorder. The final category is illness anxiety disorder. That's old school hypochondriasis. All that means is that you're worrying about something medical for which there's either no physical symptoms whatsoever, or the physical symptoms are so mild or benign that no one would really consider much about them. Kind of the classic people who think they're going to get HIV, they're going to get cancer, but there's no cancer symptoms. They think they're going to have ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. They're going to get some brain-eating amoeba, but there's no symptoms to support that. So medical issues that you're concerned about because you have a medical diagnosis, that's one category. The two most common categories are you have physical symptoms, but no one's medicalized it or diagnosed it, or you have no physical symptoms, but you're worried about having a disease. And those are the three primary categories. Michael, you want to talk a little bit about how we differentiate those from sort of the OCDs and maybe the emetophobias and the other sort of medicalized conditions, which we see a lot of as well.
Yeah, that we were just talking about this kind of broader topic of health anxiety also being how we become very concerned about somatic symptoms of just like how we feel, which isn't necessarily health anxiety per se. So we think about things like OCD with health themes,
Sure.
where it's going to look very similar. However, you might notice that if you have OCD with health themes, some of the compulsions or rituals that you might do might just be a little bit more unique or special. You know, it's if I tap on the table 3 times, I won't get cancer, right? And whereas health anxiety may be a little bit more centered on, I'm going to go get another test or I'm going to go get another evaluation, those types of things. But then there's also these other related disorders when we think about emetophobia or fear of throwing up or food allergies or, like concerns around food allergies or ORFID, or there's all these somatic kind of diagnosis that we could put it there as well, which is heavily symptom focused. They're not necessarily health anxiety, but they do share some similarities in terms of there's usually some type of symptom, some kind of feeling that people have. And then there's a interpretation of what that feeling means. Oh my goodness, this means I'm going to throw up. Or panic disorder is quite similar in terms of like, I start to notice some physical symptoms. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have a panic attack. And so those are some of the differences between those. I think, that piece of that Josh was talking about in the beginning is that while health anxiety, we had this, we run a free monthly support group. And in the support group, it was a big discussion about these differences. What is the difference between one of these and the other one of these? What if I'm actually struggling with a real health condition? And there are differences amongst them, although there's a lot of similarities too.
Mm-hmm. So a very narrow topic.
Very narrow.
This is what you're saying.
Hey, this is book number 1. We got books to go here, man. We're just in volume 1.
Yeah. So we've got people who come in for the treatment of health anxiety. What are some typical presentations or ways that people present their health anxiety to you?
Well, and I think the things that we're going to see is obviously a hyper focus on physical symptoms, and also the possibilities of what those physical symptoms could mean. I think there's some big players. Usually people don't come in really worried that they have the common cold, although I think that would be much easier to treat, honestly. So, but they're the big scary things, right? Is that they're the concerns around, do I have cancer? Do I have a brain aneurysm? Is this the starting signs of ALS? And when we think about these triggers, there's these 2 places that I think are really important just to identify a lot of times what we're seeing people triggered by, which is either one, physical symptoms. They have something going on in their bodies. Now, they could be really significant physical symptoms, or they could be a headache that comes and goes. That's not really all that big of a deal, but boy, is it scary about the possibilities of what it could mean. Or sometimes they run into other triggers in their life. A big one that I've seen for clients here lately is sometimes, and the algorithm kind of works against people, is that you start to get some of those Instagram pages about, this person's journey with cancer, right? And then they start to watch it, they start to get freaked out, but then all of a sudden the algorithm was like, wow, you really like that one. Let me show you more.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that can be a concern. So it's really the big, scary health concerns that a lot of times we see people presenting with, even though they haven't had any evidence or any workups or anything that would indicate at this point in time that that's what the concern is going on.
Okay. So what do we have available for treatment now for health anxiety, and not just for the person we're working with, but I'm assuming the broader treatment community and the family system, which the person finds themselves in as well?
What we see is that there's a lot of treatment consistencies where between OCD and health anxiety. And so a lot of the traditional, what we see is what's effective with with OCD also lends scientifically as well through research to be very effective with health anxiety as well. And so I know in some of the presentations, we really try to find some of the research that would look at what does the research say about CBT interventions such as ERP or ACT or metacognitive interventions to be able to be effective with health anxiety as well. And I think when we think about the book itself, right, is that we really try to break down, and on the website, so if you want to check that out, is we really try to look at the functional pieces of these things, right? As of, in OCD, we're going to be really focusing on there's going to be a trigger, obsession, and compulsion. We use that terminology within our book just because it's easier and it's a better acronym than trying to say fears and safety behaviors, honestly. So, and so when we think about that TOs and Cs, right, is that there's a lot of things that we think about interventions for OCD lend themselves to be functionally very helpful also in health anxiety because the structure, the bones of it can be so similar in many ways.
To extend that, and just to reiterate what you said, Michael, Know OCD, the organization, prides itself on not just providing support and treatment for OCD conditions, but doing so following best practices. And
Right.
Patrick, as the chief clinical officer, you have an enviable role of overseeing more clinicians than any person in the country who specialize in what we're describing today. That means that you have the task to make sure that you and your team are keeping up on the science of what treatment looks like for OCD and related conditions. Michael and I, when we wrote this book, and as we continued to disseminate best practices and presentations and workshops to clinicians, but also to people who suffer with it and for family members and loved ones, is that the research is obscenely undeniable. There have been significant RCTs, randomized controlled trials, comparing support groups, passive psychotherapy, supportive psychotherapy, even psychodynamic psychotherapy in relation to CBT, ERP, acceptance and commitment therapy, and even doing this via the web. And the research is consistent that all the things that we talk about in the OCD community apply one-to-one, that CBT, the parent treatment called CBT, and then all of its sort of subdivisions of it, which would be exposure and response prevention, metacognitive therapies, as Michael alluded to. The research is very consistent that CBT is not only the leading intervention, it is the intervention that provides the best evidence for treatment for health anxiety and for managing related fears of actual medical issues, which has been exciting to see, along with comorbid conditions. So if you're battling health anxiety and have depression, battling health anxiety and have panic disorder, the research continues to extend itself both in those research studies and beyond the study, 6 months out and 12 months out. So the research community has done a great job taking the OCD research literature and extending it to health anxiety. And I can't reiterate that enough, because we're not here just to talk about just try CBT. CBT is the intervention, and what that means specifically is some version of exposure-based therapy and addressing how you think, how you feel physiologically, and behaviorally what you're going to do about it to approach or approximate fear. And so we wrote the book not only addressing interventions specific to that, exposure and response prevention, acceptance and commitment therapy, addressing metacognitive issues, addressing mental rituals, which is not talked enough about still in the OCD community or health anxiety. Our book talks at length about mental rituals and sort of the cognitive side of someone getting ruminative or preoccupied. But we start the book not about talking about health anxiety or its interventions. We start the book talking about the mindset of being an anxiety specialist. And I came up with the term anxiety specialist of Atlanta a decade ago because I didn't know what else to call the practice. But our team and practices like Know OCD, who's gigantic, are anxiety specialists. They're teaching people to face fear head on when it's not life-threatening or dangerous, to do things that invoke or create some fear or angst, knowing that you can handle it because you were doing it well before you saw the therapist, and to take brave actions while you're facing those fears that get you closer to living a full life. And it's why we were, thrilled to be able to ask you to write the foreword. And if anyone has not read our book or read the foreword, please, that foreword is Patrick sharing his heart out, watching his wife struggle and battle a real disease and ultimately succumb to losing his wife to cancer. And most of us have lost someone to cancer, know someone who has. The mindset of facing fear head on and living your fullest life, which Patrick talks about in the foreword, is what the book is all about. Every intervention, Patrick, we talk about begins with an evidence-based skill.
Yeah.
It ends with doing things that make your life bigger. And so the phrase we use throughout the book and in all of our work is live with fear, not in fear. And it sucks, but that means you have to live with sadness, live with pain, live with grief, and live with fear, but don't let it dictate how you act. And if you don't, I don't really care what intervention you choose, facing fear head on and finding things that make your life bigger is what every book that all of our colleagues have ever written is about. And so, yes, we talked about evidence-based interventions and treatment skills and ERP and ACT and all those things, but it's about facing things that are scary, but not dangerous, and making your life bigger and more beautiful. And I hope people who read this book and listen to this podcast and to do anything that Know OCD supports has that mindset. That's how we started the book. It's also how we end the book.
It's so important then to have that discussion around treatment. I mean, we at Know OCD use exposure and response prevention therapy. Of course, gold standards of treatments are so important, and the work that you guys describe in the book includes that, among other things, which I'm excited that we'll have a chance to discuss those other areas as well. And I know the work that you've done to train your therapist at the clinic, and I'm sure you've gotten a lot of traction and play on health anxiety at your clinic out of this. And my little role in it too with the forward has been an honor for me, and has helped me even in training the therapists that we have at Know OCD and recognizing health anxiety even better and how to apply the treatment to that condition. And the royalty check has not shown up yet. I'm shocked. I don't know, but
we sent it, and then we got to return. We got to return to
is that what?
So where
okay.
are you?
All right. No, shocked. I don't know. All right. Well, maybe
You
maybe
get tendinitis from signing 1 cent checks. Is that a Seinfeld episode or something?
Yes. Right, exactly. Yes. No money was exchanged for the forward, by the way, folks, just so you know. But it was hard to write, obviously, because having gone through and living with somebody who was struggling, and I was open about her struggle with how she faced cancer and how she kept wanting to apologize for getting cancer. And I had to bring in those evidence-based things into my own life and not be a hypocrite and say to everybody else, do it for you. But I mean, I'm not doing it for you. No, I had to do it too, as part of my experience in living with somebody who was experiencing a horrible chronic health condition.
Just want to again also thank you for that, because you start off the book with the right mindset of, we're going to talk about tough things.
Yeah.
And whether you're dealing with one of the many sub-themes of OCD or health anxiety, we joke a lot. We use sarcasm. We use scary statistics. Death and dying is not funny to any therapist. It's the things we don't want to deal with and talk about, but we're good at doing for other people. But when someone's battling health anxiety, there is this irony that's taking place. And I sometimes call it the cancer of OCD, because assuming you're not battling a real medical issue like your wife was, and my mom is right now, she's battling cancer. Mom, much love to you right now. She's hopefully beating it. Most people with health anxiety don't have a diabolical disease, thank goodness, but they're acting like they do.
Right.
And they're thinking like they do. And they're believing that they do. And the problem with that is, no different than OCD, your world gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And so at some point, you're going to do hopefully what the doctors have recommended. And we talk about this in the book as well, Patrick. In addition to therapy interventions, Michael and I are very quick to say, meet with your provider, talk to your primary care doctor, meet with an oncologist, talk to your physician, and get as much medical clearance as you can, and hopefully trust the process and trust your providers. And if you can't, find another provider that will listen to you. As you know, that a lot of populations, women, people of color, do get marginalized and minimized in their expression of symptoms in medical models. And we know that. Fight for your rights and advocate for your needs, or bring someone with you that can advocate for you. But if you've gotten what we would describe as a pretty good, clean bill of health, which is hitting most of the people that we're talking about when we treat health anxiety, unfortunately, most people would rather have the disease, whatever it is, just so they have certainty. Michael has behind him, embrace uncertainty, certainty and closure and clarity. They'd rather have an illness so they can move forward in their lives rather than accept the possibility that maybe they don't, and take one step forward and live as brave and honorable of a life as you can. And if at some point you do have an illness, then the people who love you and support you are going to be there to cry with you and hold your hand and help you get the best treatment possible. But there's a mindset in here of accepting the fact that if you're not battling a real medical illness, by facing health anxiety and giving into rituals and ruminations, you're kind of operating like you have a medical illness. And so that's also throughout the interventions, which is some leap of faith, some bravery, and some acceptance of, we will never get perfect medical clearance. Even people who are, have cancer remission get cancer again. People who once were sick sometimes get sick again. But in the moments where you're not facing a medical illness, we pray and hope that you listen to a therapist or someone who cares for you and take those risks and take those chances, because hopefully in that moment, you're not dying.
Right. It reminds me of a statement I say very often in therapy. Will you spend the rest of your life living next to your tombstone wondering when you'll be 6 feet under it? Or will you arrive on the day of your death at your tombstone saying, well, that was fun? You know?
Is that how you start your sessions?
Second session, not
Just
the first
second
one.
session.
Yeah,
Just intake.
Yeah. But unfortunately, how many people do that? How many people, exactly what you said there, Josh, how many people just sit next to that tombstone and stare at it and going, oh, someday I'm going to be under you. And then they don't live their life. They live the life of worry and future forecasting, which is always the worst case scenario and all these things.
So that's the dilemma with all these anxiety disorders. And we can include social anxiety and panic disorder. And people are either questioning what happened back there, which we'll call post-event rumination, or they're such in an anticipatory anxiety state of what's going to happen, they're not living in now. And unfortunately, for some of us, now is short. For some of us, now is long, but now is now. And it's cliche and cheesy, but Michael and I spend our time in therapy with a support group. We love meeting people and giving them, the compassion in the community to hear that they're not alone, that they can do a lot more right now than sit there and suffer in silence. Yeah. And again, even if you're battling something medical, there are still skills that you can do to get further away from the worries and preoccupations about that. The book talks about it. Know OCD teaches it. Our clinic practices it. All the websites and books we all love talk about this. But there's a bigger life out there than sitting there and wondering about wondering.
We're coming into cold and flu season. COVID is potentially on the rise in some areas. We know. What's the difference between somebody with and without health anxiety and their reactions to that type of news? And what can we do for those with health anxiety to hopefully shape those reactions to be more like those who don't have it?
I think the one thing that I always think about with this, and this topic came up in our support group, was how do we decide, if we're actually getting sick or if this is our anxiety? And I think that's the age-old question that we hear a lot. And if there was a great answer to it, I promise I would give it to you. But unfortunately, there is some uncertainty around those, which is what makes the merry-go-round go round.
Unacceptable. Give me the certain. No.
That's going to be in volume 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's an important question, right? Because when we're thinking about getting sick, or just our bodies in general, they work pretty well most of the time. But they're not the most well-oiled places in the world. You can wake up and because you slept on a sock, your back hurts for some reason. Who knows why? It's just what happens, right? And so we have to kind of remember is that the body is a noisy place. Mm-hmm. There's aches, weird feelings, all of these things that probably mean absolutely nothing, but could mean something. And whether I'm talking about OCD or health anxiety, some things I usually talk about with my clients is it's kind of like OCD's favorite question, which is, what does that mean? Right. And so we get a tummy ache, or we get a pain in our back. And a lot of times we're going to play the question of, what does that mean? Yeah. Right. So as we get closer to get into cold and flu season, which is always great, especially I have kiddos. And so that's really wonderful because you just know you have 2 Petri dishes just running around the house at any point in time. You're going to get sick. Now, there's 2 words that I've heard outlined that I've always really resonated with, I've really liked, which is the 2 words of, is something prevalent and is it persistent? And if a symptom, or I'll actually add one more word, new, prevalent and persistent. If something is new, you've never really felt it before, it's quite prevalent and it's persistent. If you haven't got it checked out yet, go check it out. Go to the doctor, set up an appointment. If it's incredibly prevalent and you're bleeding from many orifices, go to the hospital right now. That's terrible.
That's terrible.
Like, go. So we have to kind of remember is that there's going to be times where if something is significant enough, we need to go get checked out. If you're feeling sick, we can go to the doctor. We have to remember is health anxiety is about immediacy. It's about feeling these symptoms and it's saying, you need to go get this checked out right now. Something really bad is happening. And so one of the things that I hear consistently from my clients that can be helpful is patience with some of these things, which is as hard as it is if something is maybe not persistent or prevalent, if it's kind of flighty, here and there, I had a headache for an hour and then it went away. And it's like, all right, so that may not be persistent. If you have a headache consistently for 2 weeks, go to the doctor. That's a little bit longer than maybe what we would expect. There's no specific timeline. However, what's also difficult is that, the symptoms of being sick and also being anxious around your health are unfortunately the exact same.
Yes.
Which is just, I wish there was two different ones, kind of like with panic, right? However, I think that's one of the things that I hear people come back to is if I can look for if something's new, if something is persistent or prevalent, if it's not fitting those three things, if I've had concerns around my back and it's really never found anything, and I've gone to the doctor and they've checked here and there, and I really think it's because of my anxiety, but man, is it scary not to go get it checked out. Those might be the ones that we could find some of those brave moments like Josh was talking about to lean into. And so it can be challenging, but I think those are some of the things to start to look for to start to make that distinction between, do I need to do something about this or do I not? The last thing I'll just throw in there real quick is sometimes delay is a great tool, which is, sometimes it feels like I need to go to the urgent care right now. And if we can change that even to, it's like, I'm not saying I'm not going to go at all, but can I just give it a little bit of time? Like, how about I have dinner with my family and then after dinner, if I still feel as bad as what I did before, then I can go. However, I think sometimes people find is if they're dealing with health anxiety, sometimes that allows the emotion to pass and they may not be as concerned about those things after dinner as they were before.
That was good. So he basically said, come up with your own criteria. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry. This is awkward. I'm getting an unknown call.
Oh
no. Hello? Okay. It wasn't really an unknown call, but that was health anxiety right there, guys.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Because we all have the criteria, Michael, yeah. We all have the criteria that unknown callers, we don't answer them. So all Michael is saying is come up with criteria that makes sense to you and that feels good to you, whether it's about persistence or pervasiveness or new symptoms, and try and stick with it. And most of us know when unknown caller shows up on your phone, we don't answer the phone.
No.
We all just know. We've all agreed on that. Now, if you feel like you want to answer it, that's a you issue. And sometimes if we answer it and like joke with the person, they now know you're a live human and they're going to spam your phone with texts and phone calls. You don't want that. So we like to teach people, we talk about in the book, we talk about in therapy, that spam emails or spam phone calls, we have all come to the decision, we don't answer them, we don't click on the hyperlink, we move it to the trash. It's still there, but it's no longer in our field of view, and we move on to something else. And so you have to come up with your criteria of which unknown callers do you answer and which ones do you not. And I think the health anxiety sufferer is just more likely to answer the phone when it's an unknown caller. The rest of us are like, I'm not answering that crap. Put that away. So your criteria is your criteria, but come up with a plan, try and stick with it. And as Michael said, delay it. I could have delayed not answering the fake phone for about 5 more seconds, but then I had to answer it. And if I can't wait to answer the unknown caller, that's a me issue. So we use lots of those examples to teach people the pragmatics of, you already have this in your own life. There are certain people you won't answer the front door for. There are certain emails you won't click on, and there are certain phone calls you won't take. Use that logic with health anxiety. Come up with your understanding of what you think is worthy of your attention and what should just stay in the awareness of your space and attend to the things that matter. So, Patrick, I apologize for taking a fake phone call during your podcast.
No, and it's funny. Then I picked up my phone. I was like, how many unknown calls have I gotten this? I was just scrolling a little bit while you were saying that. I'd be like, it's amazing the amount of spam calls and that you get.
That's health anxiety and OCD 101. It's going to keep pinging you and keep pinging you. And if you respond to even one of them, which is called the intermittent reinforcement schedule, if you respond to one and do one ritual, it's just going to be, you know what? It's all going to open up. It's all going to be there.
Which is so hard for people to understand, I think, until I say, I haven't used heroin for 3 weeks, but it's been a really rough day. And I think just today, I'm going to, and everyone goes, no, bad idea. No, don't, but that's what a compulsion can be like for someone with those, OCD is always going to be in the background going,
Yep.
hey, I've got something for you. If you want to buy into it, I'm here. Hello. And our job is to help teach people to resist that, not to make it go away, because we still haven't figured that out yet, right? We still haven't got to that point where we can make a promise to someone that you'll never have a thought or an image or an urge about something whatsoever.
Well, I think it also goes back to in the book we talk about, there are some cognitive tools that we can use. And one of the cognitive tools that I'm thinking about is just kind of what you're leaning into, right? Is like, if we go with this idea of a spam phone call, which, thanks a lot, guys. I've been answering all these calls this entire time. You could have given me a little
We just didn't tell you about the rule.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate that. Although my phone has been blowing up with spam phone calls. It's terrible. But anyway, I think when we think about these cognitive tools, right, is, it's kind of like each one of these calls we get has this prospect of like, oh my goodness, I bet you this is something really important, right? And then we pick up the phone and we realize that we've been duped, right? But it's like every time we put down our phone, we get another call and like, oh, this must be really important. Nope, just kidding. Oh, this one might be really important. And I think what's difficult is that a lot of times if we view a lot of these messages as incredibly important, we're always going to get sucked into the process. So when we think about these cognitive tools, we talk about these ideas of like, thoughts can be real, symptoms can be real. It's important to question their reliability, which is, I can get a spam phone call and maybe there's a little thought in my mind of like, ooh, that could be something really important. And it is a little bit of a risk to disregard it. To be like, well, you know what? I don't think it's anything. It's probably just a spam call. But that's scary. Because like, what if that was my $1 million call? I don't think they do the Publishers Clearinghouse anymore. I don't know if they do or not. But that could have been them. I might have gotten that call. And so there's a bit of this piece of like, a lot of times we really trust a lot of the health anxiety thoughts that we get. You get a symptom, a trigger, right? Which could be anything internal or external to you. And then we get this scary thought. This is cancer, right? And then we immediately get into that because we trust that thought. You're like, oh my goodness, you're right. This is really bad. I better do something about this. And so one of the first interventions we can start to look at is a lot of times we trust the spam calls. And so we do need to start to consider is like, maybe they're not as trustworthy as I thought, right? Like, how many years have you been almost battling and like just missed an aneurysm? 17 years. That's it. Either it hasn't been happening or your luck is incredible.
I've been fixing to get ready to have one for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that we can come back to with this is kind of an intervention is, if you're getting a lot of these, if you're getting a scary thought about something medically happening and yet none of the evidence around you is really supporting that, reassurance is not going to work. There's always going to be a way that our brain is going to be able to talk us out of that. But that is also the beauty of, well, if I just let this spam call go, could I be missing a great opportunity for my life? I suppose. However, we also have to remember is that with that scary uncertainty, there is also something very tangible and helpful that you can tap into at that point. Because if, Josh got a spam phone call, he would have been taken away from our discussion. However, if he makes a place for that to say, that is really scary. I guess that could be that thing. But you know what? I'm going to take the chance on that. I'm actually going to get back to our discussion. You actually get to get back into the valuable and meaningful things in life that a lot of times we're most afraid to lose.
Mm-hmm. This is why when we're training therapists, we actually tell them at the beginning, do not dismiss, marginalize, minimize someone's expression of physical symptoms. They are real. When Michael said real versus reliable, you are having pain in your arm. I can see your muscle twitch. I can see that you're in distress right now. Those are real symptoms. They may not be reliable of a syndrome. And so this is why at the very beginning of treating health anxiety, we're working with medical providers sometimes, or we're having our patients work with medical providers to get as close to that clean bill of health as possible. And sometimes throughout the course of treatment, I'm seeing 2 or 3 people right now for like, they're still going to see doctors and questioning stuff. And I can't stop that, but I'm operating from the assumption that they're not battling a medical issue right now because either the lab results have not come back, the lab results were wrong, or they don't have it, because I don't have facts that say they're battling a medical disease. So I'm operating from that stance versus someone who's having lots of new symptoms like Michael talked about, and they have yet to see a doctor. I'm probably more reluctant to start doing the things we're describing. So I'm referring to the person who has either been to plenty of doctors or is having the same kind of symptoms they've had over and over and over. My mindset is you're having real experiences or real symptoms, but they may not be symptomatic of or prognostic of a real disease or syndrome. And if I start there, to Michael's point, they're real, but they're not reliable of what we actually think they might be reliable of. So now it's your job to figure out what things are you going to allow yourself to pay attention to, which is focusing on like this presentation talk or podcast right now. And what things am I going to be aware of, which is in the next 20 minutes, my wife's going to be outside my office because we're about to go take a train down to an area to watch my daughter play football. And you guys probably have something else. You're an hour behind me. You might have another hour of work, but in 20 minutes, I'm going to go live the rest of my life and go see my daughter cheer for football tonight. So my awareness is there, but my attention's on you guys, because right now the most important thing is talking to these two amazing people who I adore and love very much. So that's attention versus awareness, Patrick. That's another skill. Where do you put your energy towards? What chips do you put on the table? Which things do you allow just to sort of float around here? And the problem with health anxiety is there are lots of things, no different than OCD, that are floating around here all the time.
Tons.
Symptoms, panic, physical sensations down there, thoughts, worries, a TV show, someone talking to you, they're everywhere. And if you focus on all of those, which is putting your attention on them, you're missing out on the beautiful things that are right in front of you. So that attention versus awareness mindset is another cognitive skill. Another one, which comes out of the acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive diffusion place, is really appreciating the difference between thoughts and beliefs. It sounds overly simplified, but it's underutilized in therapy and in practice. And we talk about this in the book, website, group as well. All bananas are fruit, but not all fruits are bananas. All beliefs were once thoughts, but not all thoughts have to be believed. And so we talk about health anxiety and OCD thoughts as the burps, farts, and hiccups of your mind.
Hey, this is a family show now. Come on.
Sorry. We all burp, fart, and hiccup. Come on. They're there. Most of us don't overthink them. Sometimes we apologize for them. Sometimes if you're younger or funny, you fabricate them. But
sometimes when you're 50s, they're still hysterical too.
All the time.
Yeah.
Michael talked about the noisy body. Our bodies do all sorts of things. Thoughts is just another expression of something our body's going to do, whether you like it or not. But that doesn't mean because you thought, oh my God, am I gay? Am I a pedophile? Did someone break into my house? Do I have hepatitis? Just because you think that doesn't mean you have to then follow through on that, especially when there's no sensory data, facts, lab reports, police reports to support that. But someone with OCD or anxiety or health anxiety is going to pursue that.
Yeah.
And so another skill is to say, hey, I'm having a thought. I'm having an automatic experience up here that's not up to me. The question is what is my next thought going to be? What do I want to believe in?
Yeah.
Where do I want to put my energy? And so one of the skills is when you have a really scary thought, like, gosh, like I'm terrified I might have HIV. I'm terrified I might be having an aneurysm. Assuming you're not, and assuming you're medically stable, you can change that into I'm having the thought that I'm having an aneurysm.
Yeah.
Which is very different than, oh my God, I'm having an aneurysm.
Yeah.
Because that's just the thought. To step back from it and analyze that thought, just from a step back, gives you some space to realize, well, yeah, my brain's focused on that, but I have nothing here to support that. So that's separating thoughts and beliefs and what you really want to put your mind and attention towards. And there's a whole bunch of cognitive skills out there. We go through them in the book, and all the OCD books that our friends have written do that beautifully. But there's a lot of cognitive work that can be done there to separate yourself from that persistent need to ruminate and question, analyze, and figure stuff out. That is a ritual. It's just mental rituals.
On a flip side of where I think most people take this, I've even seen over the course of my career, people who have come in who are in absolutely terrible shape out of a fear of their heart rate going up because they think that that will cause them to have a heart attack and die. And now doctors are literally telling them to exercise and to get in shape. And they're so afraid of a feeling that they're actually putting themselves in danger. Talk about that from a health anxiety point of view.
Well, I think the two things that kind of tail what we were just talking about to that is, one is the more we pay attention to anything, the more we're going to notice.
There you go.
And so just like when you were talking about this distinction between awareness and attention, if I pay attention to my body, I'm going to notice a whole lot of things. And
Yep.
those are going to be endless health anxiety triggers, right? And be like, well, what's that feeling? Well, why does my leg feel like that now? And most likely, if we weren't paying attention to it, we probably would never notice them. But then we start to get into this relationship with our physical symptoms, like you're mentioning, Patrick, where we start to have scary stories written about our physical symptoms, about what they mean, what they could lead to, our ability to be able to handle them or get through them, or if they'll ever go away. And I think that's where we start to get into these treatment ideas of, well, avoidance of those types of symptoms, or unless medically advised, avoidance of those symptoms are not going to get you better.
Right.
Because as soon as we start to feel our heart race start to increase, unless your doctor has told you otherwise, of like, you better keep your heart rate down, you're never, that's going to be the relationship of, oh my goodness, that is going to be really scary. It's going to be the end of me. I'm going to have a heart attack. And yet then we try to fight it. We try to get rid of it. We try to not pay attention to it. We try to distract ourselves, and the fear persists.
Yeah.
And so when we think about, treatment, it's about doing some scary things, about taking some of those leaps of faith, about working, even if you're working with a therapist, trying to find manageable pieces that you can start to lean into. One of those things is, if people are familiar with what we call interoceptive exposures, right, is about bringing on physical sensations. I think with health anxiety, a big exposure that we practice is working out and exercising.
Yes.
Yep.
Because it's terrifying. However, it also puts to the test when we lean out, right? There's many things we can learn when you actually get your heart rate up and you don't die. And you're okay. And even more so that maybe you can handle it. Because I think sometimes it's beyond just if I'm going to die or something bad's going to happen. There's a lot of thoughts and beliefs that people get into about, I'm not going to be able to handle how I feel. And I think a lot of times people are shortchanging themselves. They can handle way more than they can feel.
Yes.
The problem is they've engaged in so much avoidance, is that it's completely shot their confidence of being able to take on some hard things. So when we think about treatment, then we're starting to talk about, well, how do we engage in some challenges and some exposures? And those things might look like interoceptives, like working out. Even for some of my health anxiety clients, that's sometimes like going to concerts or going to sporting events, or, somewhere where maybe it's not easy to get medical care. Or, even if it's, I have a client that loves nature, but will not go out in nature alone because they're afraid, oh my goodness, like what if something medically happens to me? I have a heart attack, no one's there. And so they really enjoy those times where they can go out on nature walks by themselves. And so those things are challenging, they're difficult, they're anxiety provoking. But what's also really important to them, or what's important about them too, is that they're valuable. They're important. They're actually living life. And, it's a lot of times the life that we're so afraid that's going to slip between our fingers.
And even if exercise is not viewed as an exposure, which it doesn't have to be,
No.
the whole point of anxiety treatment, amongst all the anxiety disorders, is helping people gain mastery and control. And I can't think of a more healthy, positive, cathartic, calorie burning, wonderful thing to do. You pick your own exercise. For some of us, it's pickleball. For some of us, it's going to the gym. For some of us, it's riding the Peloton, whatever it is. If you're exercising, you're doing things that are putting yourself in control of your own body. So even if we're not talking about this as challenges, we use the word challenges, Patrick, in the book, versus exposures, because exposure therapy, which is an amazing therapeutic, evidence-based, compassionate experience to help someone overcome a real debilitating disease like OCD, social anxiety, panic disorder, PTSD, health anxiety, still requires some special elements.
Of course.
And so we call them challenges. Anyone can do a challenge. And challenges involve doing tough things that are safe but scary, and doing your best not to ritualize. But exposures have certain goals. Exercise can simply be the goal of just you being in control of your body, when health anxiety notoriously is trying to take control of your body. It's trying to disrupt you and confuse you and make you think certain things are happening. And exercise is just a beautiful way to express your own control of your own body. And exercise can be meditation, yoga. You don't have to be sweating and breathing heavy. It's just doing things that give your body extension and space, things that health anxiety does not want it to have.
before we go, I think it's important, and I've had other people, and this question has come up slightly, but for the two of you, because it's a fundamental piece of it, I want to go back to that idea that you said at the beginning of the ability to kind of pull the rug out from underneath anxiety and OCD, the use of humor and sarcasm and things, and how do you see that really move the therapeutic process forward for some people?
Just before we start, when you said before we go, was that like a medical death concept?
Yes,
Or you just
yes.
okay.
You've only got 8 minutes to live, Josh. I don't know if you knew that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Make
that's
your
an
answer
example
good.
of that right now. Michael's shaking his head, and Patrick said something stupid back to me because I had said something stupid. That's the point.
I don't say stupid.
All of a sudden, well, it was in response to my stupidity. All of a sudden, look at this. Now hilarity has ensued.
Yeah, there we go.
This is the point right here. This is to answer your question. Because therapy does not have to be so darn serious,
Right.
even though we're talking about serious topics. And health anxiety and OCD, the research, I don't know if it's there yet, but we know in the health anxiety space, because I've talked a lot about the evidence of treatment of research for health anxiety, but we know in the OCD space, OCD is viewed in the top 10 World Health Organization's most debilitating diseases amongst all, not just psychiatric, medical and psychiatric.
Mhm.
I am assuming that health anxiety is in that same space. When Michael and I present research on it, we also talk about how health anxiety impacts employment, health, finances, family functioning. I run a separate support group with Dr. Michelle Whitkin twice a month for loved ones, romantic partners who have partners with OCD and health anxiety. It impacts everyone. But humor and sarcasm and levity is designed to be put in place not as an avoidance tactic, not as a defense mechanism, but because you can do that and concurrently also talk about scary stuff. So this is a very serious podcast. You run a very serious company. We do very serious work all the time, and we're lucky to do it. But if you can sneak in some kindness and compassion, and for Michael and I, it's humor. I mean, how do you not laugh at some of the things that people talk about and try and do because they're just taking themselves into almost a funny place, even though it's not funny that they think they're dying. It's funny that they're spending all this energy towards something that objectively just doesn't make much sense. But you have to be careful about how you use humor and what jokes you use. Michael and I in our book put scary statistics in every chapter. Some books that we have from our friends and colleagues have a beautiful, like saying at the beginning of the chapter, Patrick, or a wonderful haiku or something from a Buddhist monk. And I love it because it sets the stage for the rest of the chapter. Our chapter is about facing fear head on, because just because you read about a brain aneurysm doesn't mean you're going to have a brain aneurysm. So if you can read 10 scary statistics in our book, you're already doing good health anxiety work, which is great. So we use that as an example of not just to traumatize or trigger people, but put a scary statistic in front of you and read it. There's something kind of weird and funny about that because it's probably something you've never heard of. And on our website, people can submit scary statistics to add to the big volume of scary health statistics we have. So I think using humor and funny anecdotes and memes and video clips and music in therapy is a neat way to disrupt the linearity and seriousness of what we already do. You also have to be careful of how you use it, when you use it, and who you're using it with. But there's some funny stuff we talk about when we talk about poo-poo and pee-pee and weird things we're looking at our body parts and getting out of the shower and things that just, they're funny. Bodies are funny things.
Yeah. And when the patients we're working with, the members that we're dealing with can start to do that, to me, that's we've turned the corner, right? Now they're with us on that as well. Well, now, before your death in now 4 minutes, by the way, you don't have to worry about that train that you were going to go for.
In Atlanta, trust me, I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't show up. It's terrible.
Right. Yeah. Your daughter will be kicking them or cheering for the memorial for Dr. Josh.
We will miss the whole first half, I'm sure. Don't you worry about it.
You'll miss the whole game. But so just as a wrap up, though, where can people get the book and all those good things?
I was going to say the book.
Go, Michael.
I was going to say the book is on Amazon, so you can always look it up on Amazon. Josh has got
it
right in front of us. Yep. And he had mentioned during the during the podcast, but also it's important to go through
those names.
is going through and also reminding is that there is a website, and it's just overcominghealthanxiety.com. And
Overcominghealthanxiety.com. Okay, cool.
yep,
Keeping it simple.
and resources. There's a whole section that talks about the TOs and Cs. We have examples there. We have 2 massive lists that list out examples of triggers, examples of obsessions, examples of compulsions. So it's a great resource. There's also links to our groups and everything on there too. So if you're interested, we're trying to build it up more and more. And the one offer that we always put out, if there's something that you think that should be on there or that you think would be interesting, like send us a message. There's a way to email us, because we're always looking for ways to create accessible resources that give good information and also point people in the right direction. Because, I think OCD understandably often gets misunderstood. And I think health anxiety is in the same realm, where whether it's for medical professionals or for for families, there's a lot of times that people just get the feedback of like, well, that's not real, or that's just your anxiety, and there's really kind of a hopeless place people get to, which is, if I can't find relief through the medical system, I'm done. There's nothing I can do. I'm just stuck with this. And I hope we really are getting to the place where we can show people there's actually a psychological treatment that's very effective, that actually can give you that control and relief that you want.
Dr. Josh Spitalnick, Michael Stier, thank you for joining today on the Get to Know OCD podcast, and look forward to maybe a part 2 someday. That would be fun. When that volume 2 comes out, we'll have you back. That'll be awesome.
When No CD opens up, No Health Anxiety.
There we go.
We'll be there.
We'll
ready
be there
to fight.
Yeah.
Patrick, we love you and all the work you do. Thank you for joining us on this journey and supporting all the work we've done in this book. It means the world to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you. If you're living with OCD, you can get better. And with the right treatment, you can really learn to manage your symptoms and put yourself, not OCD, in charge of your life. Head to knowcd.com to become a part of the world's largest obsessive compulsive disorder community and get connected to highly trained therapists in the NoCD network. Keep up with the Get to Know OCD podcast and learn more about all things OCD by subscribing to NoCD on YouTube. And we're sharing interviews with celebrities, content creators, Q&As where we answer important questions from the OCD community, and educational videos to help you find effective treatment and get better. If you like it, subscribe. We hope to see you soon. Thanks.